Hello, this is Gradye Parsons, and this is our continuing series on the foundations of polity, which is the new first section of the form of government for the Presbyterian Church USA, approved when we approved the new form of government finally through the presbytery process this last July. We're still looking at section F101, which is God's mission, and we're going to look at the second paragraph today. And it says, "The mission of God in Christ gives shape and substance to the life and work of the church. In Christ, the church participates in God's mission for the transformation of creation and humanity by proclaiming to all people the good news of God's love, offering to all people the grace of God at font and table, and calling all people to discipleship in Christ. Human beings have no higher goal in life than to glorify and enjoy God now and forever, living in covenant fellowship with God and participating in God's mission." In my first church was in Newport, Tennessee, which is a small mountain county seat town on the very eastern edge of Tennessee. If you're going towards Montreat from the west on I-40, you had to go through Newport before you hit that big mountain pass on your way to North Carolina. The church had been there since the early part of the 1800s, and it was a church with fine Christian people who spoke almost in perfect King James Version Bible language. One of the members was a guy by the name of Mr. Alexander, who was already 90 when I got there in the late 70s. Mr. Alexander had come to that part of the world with his father to work in his uncle's lumber camp when lumbering was a big business in Appalachia. He actually rode in an ox cart up the mountain to the lumber camp. Mr. Alexander was elected an elder and was one of those lifetime elders before we had rotation. He often told me the story of teaching a young people's Sunday school class, and he asked them the question from the Westminster Shorter Catechisms, "What is the chief end of man?" And he said this one young fellow scratched his head and said, "Well, it's his head, I guess." Well, we know that's not exactly what the Westminster says. The Westminster says very plainly, man's chief end is to glorify God and to enjoy Him forever. This particular section of F101 is really about what your mission statement and my mission statement is about. It's really about what our mission is in God, what we're being called to do. We're being called to be part of God's work in the world, to glorify and enjoy God, and to be in partnership with God as God's doing God's mission in the world. You are God's partners. You are part of what God is doing in the world. The very familiar phrase, we are God's hands, we are God's feet, we are the visible witness. We are the God that people see in their lives. We're the one that interacts in their lives. When we do acts of mercy through Presbyterian disaster assistance, or we talk about the faith in our Sunday schools or out in the public, whatever we do, that's God working through us to witness to those folks. And we have to be mindful of that because people are very sensitive to that. In my second church, we had a water fountain, and one day I found in a corner of the church a little two-step stool covered in carpet, which I guess they used in the library at one time. So I took that stool and put it by the water fountain. And one young boy burst into church the next day and saw the step stool where he could now reach the water fountain and said, "Gosh, look what the church has done for us kids." People notice, from the youngest to the oldest, they notice how we are participating in God's partnership as we do this mission in the world, how we are enjoying God, how we are being part of this work that God is doing in the world. And then we have to keep asking ourselves, how am I living out this mission that God has given me in the world? How am I living out what it means to be a Christian? How am I living it out with my neighbors, my family, in my own interior space? How am I living out this call that God has given me, this particular mission that God has given me to be a witness about what God is doing in the world for others? A witness about reconciliation. And certainly in our world with multiple world wars and regional battles and people at odds with each other, the need for reconciliation has never been greater than it is right now as we go through this time of diminishing resources and increased anxiety, and people are at each other. So I want to challenge you just really to sit down and ask yourself, what is my mission? And how is my mission in line with what the mission God has given me to be God's person in this world? And how am I living out that mission? And how am I living that out in partnership with others? Thanks.